all right, so this is very jumbled because it comes at from different angles, but um here's what I'll say. I think in order to identify where some of the emo stuff is coming from, I think there's a big push amongst Democrats to say, what is our response? But I think there's a moment here to, if I was giving advice to myself, I would say that take a moment to understand what we're feeling. There's a lot of anger and there's a lot of sadness and bitterness and frustration, and there's also a lot of dread. I don't think that everyone's feeling the same thing. I think there's a lot of anger and frustration and fear amongst women. There's a lot of dread and empathy and coming from men who might not necessarily have to deal with the issue. But the reason I say that, John, is because, and I'll bring it to big picture. I know you want to focus on Roe, but I'll bring it to big picture. The Supreme Court also gutted a EPA, like a climate change EPA situation that really set us back. There's a docket in October that they might go after the 2024 elections and basically put the power of elections in the state legislators, which would make it easier for Trump to or whoever to steal the next election. Um, there's the reason that I think a lot of people are feeling emo is because I, uh, like I get it. Some people are blaming Biden, expand the court, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not. I will not take this this time to blame anybody. I don't think they're expanding the court is going to fix it. I don't think any. I don't think there's one thing that's going to fix any of this. So what I'm trying to say, John, is like you could have 65 seats in the Senate. You could have a supermajority. You could pass all the bills you want. And what people are feeling is that it's not going to matter because the Supreme Court is so one sided that they could repeal all of that stuff anyways. There was criticism, why didn't we codify Roe? Well, it doesn't matter because they would have repealed that anyways. They tried and they would have repealed it anyways. They're not. So I guess my question to you becomes, yes, there's a proper way to respond here. There's many answers to this problem, but I wonder if there's no hope if the Supreme Court could just do as they wish. The Supreme Court right now is just governing for Republicans' behalf, even though we have the majority in all three. So I think that's what people are feeling. And I totally get the pushback. I don't think anybody should be criticizing Biden or Democrats. I know AOC did a whole tour this week and faced criticism. But my point is, John, there's this big sense of dread that no matter what we do, no matter how many times we vote, no matter how many times we could pass any single bill that we want to pass, and it could all get repealed Supreme Court, which is unfair. So I think that's what everybody's feeling this week, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but they also have to look at the evidence, right? Um, the Republicans, Roe versus Wade was 72-73, and it passed. And it took 50 years to repeal it. They never, and we've talked about this in a previous episode, they never gave up. They just kept doing. They just kept doing. They just kept doing. One of the things that the left, the far left, loves to brag about, not brag about, but loves to pester the Democrats about, is they don't like incrementalism. Well, as I was telling some folks as relates to Roe versus Wade, incrementalism kicked your ass. And what do I mean
Mhm.
by that? They want the Republicans have wanted the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade, and every time it didn't happen, did they stop? Did they give up? Did they go ahead and say, "Oh, you didn't overturn Roe versus Wade yet"? No, they kept going back and kept going back and pecking and tipping and pecking. And guess what? They overturned Roe versus Wade. So I understand the whole concern, but I think that what we also have to do, especially with adults, and or not even let's say even with the kids, because the kids think they know it all. They need to understand and look and realize the stakes and realize that just because you don't get your way in one election, that you give up. You know, I think it's Nita Lowry, from I believe it's New York, was the woman who for years and years and years had championed the whole way that we would reform the title child tax credit, and she got it. I was with a member of Congress today who talks about how they ran on a gun platform. And 9.5 years later, they finally got some of the legislation they've been championing for 9.5 years. And we get distracted because Roe versus Wade got overturned, and we did nothing in those 50 years in which the Republicans were trying to overturn Roe versus Wade. We didn't put up any defense, right? We just, they just kept chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. So, um, I think that younger folks, the AOCs, the David Hoggs of the world, need to take a seat. David Hogg, you had a great victory in the world of guns the other week. Just so you know, it had a lot more to do with the fact that there have been people working on this issue long before you were even conceived, right? And you just happened to be in the front of the movement, near the top of the movement when this bill passed, right? You happen to be in the right in whenever that stuff happened at your high school, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now you're in the right place at the right time, and you're using your platform to go ahead and attack Democrats with, and your attacks oftentimes, and same with AOC, shows an ignorance of the law, shows an ignorance of the way congressional rules, whether House or Senate rules work. Um, it's got to stop. And one of the things that I've been very concerned with is it's July now. The general election is on the most important general election, the most important midterm election of our lifetimes is around the corner. And I think we need to be working about getting all hands on deck. And I don't know. I mean, I'm frustrated because those folks, they're not helpful. They're not helping, and they're not helpful. And we have an opportunity to stave off and maybe even make some advances. You know, but I also wonder how effective they are. You know that Act Blue, AOC's out here telling people not to donate to the candidates anymore, just, what have you. Act Blue, after Roe was overturned, had a record day.